Morning, y'all. Scott Emerson. It's a day to go vote. Early voting started yesterday in the mayoral and school board race in Big Spring. And you can go vote the rest of this week from 8 to 5 on the first floor of the courthouse. And then next week on Monday and Tuesday, you can vote from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Then, if you hadn't voted by then, you have to vote on May 7th, which is Saturday, and that will be at the voting centers. First Baptist Church, the Howard College, Ryan Hall. I think there's a couple of others. So that it's time to go vote. Get up, go do it, go vote now. I'm backing Robert Bob Moore for mayor. I think he will make a great mayor, very positive man, does not like property tax any more than any of us does, has a lot of property, owns a lot of property, pays a lot of property tax, as do I. Not our favorite thing to do every year. It's kind of like we rent from the entities. We're not happy about that. Lots of people have asked me why I no longer back Shannon, and I can tell you in a couple of points, did not particularly care for the way we fired the city manager. We paid him his golden parachute. We had to use him while he was fired and not working for the city on a contract basis to get permits, big bucks, and then use that same money that we were spending as leverage to rehire him at full pay. I was more along the lines of let's hire him back contract, let's hire a young city manager, get him trained up, let Todd do that work, and would save us some money. Didn't work out that way. We paid him his full salary, then we paid him his golden parachute, then we hired him back as his full salary. Since then, has anybody been trained to do permits or got certified to pull permits where if we had to let him go, the same thing wouldn't happen again? As far as I know, no. Second thing, the roads at the air park. After they were finished, there was a wreck out there, and so the decision was made to withhold payment until we could see if the wreck would be covered by the contractor, and at the same time the warranty was ticking on the roads. So we lost a lot of warranty on the roads. I don't even know if they're open yet. Those are on the air park. Next thing was the closing of the city. In June, July, and August is normally when the budget hearings are, depending on when they schedule them. This past year, they had a budget hearing and did it all in one day. They had scheduled 2 and 3 meetings, but they got it all done in one and decided they weren't going to have a second meeting. Shannon had to go to work, and so he couldn't attend that second meeting anyway. Because there were some people that were interested, the city went ahead and held it. That's when I discovered that I wondered how they came in with such a low budget. I couldn't go to the first budget hearing. So once I went to the second budget hearing, I figured out what they did is they took $350,000 out of streets and put it in the general fund, and then they could come in at a lower tax rate. So they came in at or below the effective tax rate or the no new revenue rate. That's a hard thing to understand, but what it amounts to is if you raise taxes this year, next year you start at the same dollar you ended at this year. So if I raise taxes $1 million this year, next year I get that same $1 million again, but I can say no new revenue. I didn't raise taxes. Well, you're getting that same million that you raised taxes last year again this year. And that's what happened. So the Shannon's first year, a $350,000 tax increase was voted in. He voted against it. And that money was earmarked only for streets and water. The second year, that became part of the effective tax rate. And I went down there and hollered about it. So they moved $350 into the streets and water budget to help fix the streets. So instead of $1 million, they had $1,350,000. And then this year, they didn't do that. They took that 350 and put it in the general fund, which allowed them to give the illusion that they had lowered taxes. They did come in a lower tax rate, but they took that $350,000 out of streets to do it. Well, when that happened and the meeting was held, Shannon wasn't there, and I guess it upset him because he shut the whole city down the next day. All the city offices, everything, under the guise of his emergency powers given to him by Greg Abbott when he declared an emergency for the state of Texas. I told Shannon early on if he ever used those emergency powers, I'd make it public, and now I am making it public. He shut the city down because he couldn't attend a meeting, and he didn't want anybody else attending it either. That is the last thing is the Big Spring Housing Authority that has come up. Shannon, for some reason, decided he wanted to get rid of the director, Miss Sharon Fritz, and asked the board of the Big Spring Housing Authority to do so. They would not, so he displaced the whole board, put a whole new board in, and that turned into a crazy situation. The Big Spring Housing Authority and Crossroads, Housing Authority and Crossroads Housing work together. Two different organizations, but Crossroads had a house that the city of Big Spring gave them years ago, and they turned it into offices. Big Spring Housing Authority moved in with them and got a sweetheart deal, $200 a month rent plus some utilities. When Shannon changed the board, the new board that he put in, the president of the board refused to sign a key holder agreement or a new lease saying that they would be responsible for whoever got the keys. And it ended up with them eviction notice being served. Big Spring Housing Authority moved out before they got evicted. Where did they move them to? They moved them to the Westside Community Center old building at ABC Park, which is not habitable. It needs a whole lot of work. And Shannon is perfectly willing to spend citizens of Big Spring money to fix the problem he created, to the tune of, the first figure was $30,000, then $90,000. Then they were trying to get the building back from Crossroads that Crossroads is trying to sell now for $200,000. And I just do not see why we would want to spend money to fix a problem that the mayor created. 2, they're a federally funded program. 3, we're going to spend that kind of money from $30,000 to $100,000 to $200,000 and then give the Big Spring Housing Authority a sweetheart deal of $2 or $3 a square foot or $200 or $300 a month. It's a federally funded program. It shouldn't take Big Spring citizens' tax dollars to fix it. What would be great is if nothing like this had ever happened and Sharon Fritz hadn't quit her job and they hired in a new interim director. But guess what? Once they moved to ABC, the ABC Park building, we made it public what was going on. And the president of the board, the one that wouldn't sign the key holder agreement, he quit. Then the interim director quit. And it was close to April the 1st. And the way that it works is that system pays the landlords. So if I'm in Section 8 housing, the landlord has to get paid. Big Spring Housing Authority is the federal program that pays them. They have HUD inspectors that go out and inspect the property. And most of you know how Section 8 housing works. Well, strangely enough, it should not cost us to fix that problem. That should be somewhere else. Both Crossroads and Big Spring Housing Authority benefited from their mutual agreement. Crossroads became eligible for grants because they were working with a Section 8 program, and Big Spring Housing Authority got a $40,000 a year grant from Crossroads. That's what they used to pay people's deposits. If you needed Section 8 housing and a deposit is required on the house or the apartment that you're renting, that's where that money came from, that $40,000 grant. Poof, that's gone. Any grants that the Crossroads got, because uh, of of them working together, those are gone. They don't get those. So both agencies suffered over this asinine move. Really is what it is. What makes it asinine? It's a whole lot like that city manager thing. Miss Fritz, when she saw what was going on and her board was getting attacked and maybe even removed and replaced, which did happen, she resigned. She didn't get fired. She quit. Well, when this interim director quit in April, they had to have somebody to pay. So guess what we did? The city rehired Sharon Fritz, the person that they created all this stuff trying to get rid of. They rehired her back. Seems like we have a history of making a decision, paying for it, and then hiring the person back. It just makes no sense at all. I like Bob Moore. He has lived here his whole life. He owns property here. He pays property taxes. That means a lot to me because I pay property taxes. Somebody can spout out they're going to zero city property tax. Does that do away with your property tax? No. There's a lot of other entities like county, school, college, water district. So your property taxes are never going to go away until the state of Texas does something about it. We can't replace property tax with sales tax in all entities. Maybe the city, which gets the smallest portion or the second smallest portion of your tax dollar every year. Biggest portion, of course, goes to schools. So go vote. Today's the day, early voting. Get that done. You can vote real easy at the courthouse. Y'all please go vote. My choice is Robert Moore, Bob Moore. Lived here his whole life, owns property, pays taxes, very honest and honorable man. Please go vote whichever way you decide. Thank you.